Reporting is just as much a coaching tool as it is to give you feedback on your just overall performance from an agency standpoint. If I'm a manager and I'm looking here and seeing Logan has been doing a great job of getting people into the short list, but then it seems to really fall off when we're getting to the submitted or interviewing stage. Well, what I could do is pop in here, see where the candidates are coming from his shortlist, and then where they're the ones that are making it to submitted.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley, and welcome to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead it teaches you how to make that change. Today we've got a great Tactical Tuesday episode ahead of us, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit more about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space. Other days we cover things like trending topics. Drop by every Tuesday, like today, for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Some days we open up for Q&A. Listeners can drop in questions that they'd like to hear us take on, so send those to us at podcast@loxo.co. And occasionally you'll hear a mic drop episode from Matt where he drops by to share something he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and thinks you should know. All right, today is part 2 in our 5-episode mini-series on the best part of recruiting, the sexiest thing in recruiting, reporting. So today we have Logan joining us again for round 2. And the thing that we're going to get into today is sourcing specifically. So why is reporting important to sourcing? What types of insights should you be able to get from source-based reports? And then we'll even get into what are 3 reports that you should be building, looking at, and then how can you build those yourselves and really get the most of it. So again, we're going to use Loxo for this because, you know, we love Loxo ourselves, but you should be able to do this with any platform that you have, whether it's whatever ATS, whatever CRM, whatever sourcing tool. We want to help you get the insights that are going to be most impactful to you understanding, like, are my sourcing efforts working? So Logan, welcome back.
Hey, Sam, nice to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. I feel like it hasn't been too long. So reporting, sourcing, let's start from the beginning. Why should you be reporting on anything related to how you source candidates?
Yeah, so, you know, as much as there's so many different tools to source, obviously, Loxo Source is the one that we love and use every day. But I think, there's also a lot of other ways that people are looking, have different tools, et cetera. And it's important because you can look at a couple different, pieces of where you're getting candidates from. You can start to look at, when you look at each source, you can start to really break down quality of candidate. You can start to, really kind of manage revenue from the standpoint of where am I spending X amount and how much am I getting back, from my placement report and where those sources are coming from. So I think it's just anytime, you're dealing with a bunch of different, candidates, clients for that matter, and the places that they're coming from, it's important to be able to kind of put it all together and say, okay, where has everything come from and what's working the best? What is giving me the most success, and then in turn, giving me the most placements.
Yeah, so you've piqued my curiosity with that. I mean, you're talking about quality of candidates, revenue, and ROI. So I'm immediately thinking, like, what business owner, what agency member wouldn't want to know some of these insights? So share some examples, just a tiny bit more in depth around like what some of these insights can be brought out from these reports.
I think just to kind of start, let's start at the beginning of our journey. I think what you can look at to just start is how many people are from the candidate perspective, the people that have been added into the database. One report I love to look at and that I think is super helpful at any given point is, you could look at your current pipeline stages and then where the sources of those candidates are. And you can then, if you start to notice, wow, I have 30 submitted candidates from Loxo Source, and then, a couple manually, however you have it set up, you can then start to look at where do I want to maybe now start my recruiting process to begin with. And then, because we all know time is money. And I think that's where you can start to really look at where in the pipeline, in the stages that are, going to get you to the finish line, and then almost kind of reel it back to starting those efforts and putting more emphasis on particular sources, because I think, as you're just kind of mentioning, it's not really worth it to, you don't want to waste time on sources that, just for the sake of volume or getting people in. That's time that could be spent in a source that's really beneficial for you. And that's where that report really comes into play.
All right. Yes. So super interesting you say that because I see us on the marketing and business side all the time where it's like, I can get you a bunch of leads from any number of source, but I want to know is like, what's making us money at the end of the day? Is it the volume based play? Is it the quality thing? So I'll always go and look at like, do you want the most of the top of the funnel? Do you want to know like what's leading to the closed won deals? What's leading to the placements that you actually make? So getting into the placement source, I think is probably something that people kind of naturally know they probably should do or start to look at. But when you can start to compare the sources, like, there's certain inbound channels, job boards that you post, you get a bunch of applicants and you're like, oh, I'm excited. I've already gotten 50 applicants, but well, like 49 of them are unqualified. So is that a good thing really at the end of the day? So let's get into our first report, the source of placements report. So for anyone listening, Logan's going to pull up his screen. He's going to show these. So definitely check out the video version of it. But Logan, let's start to go through what some of these reports look like and how people can start to build them to see the insights they can get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, um, right here, and just for everyone watching, this is just here in our test account. So, going to just kind of show some templates of reports that I find helpful. So, as you can see, nicely labeled here for the SAM placement report for the podcast. What I have here is we're just looking at a pretty basic placement report. And as you can see here, don't even necessarily have any filters applied. But what I have here is we're looking at a total value. Just this is a personal preference. I like to group it by who it was placed by. There's plenty of options that you may find better or more manageable for you to look at. And then you can see here I have this segment by candidate source. You could probably do the flip in that might even be something to look at, where if you might want to group by the source here. So then you can start to see the revenue, the revenue, total revenue per source. And just have this load here and we'll see what I'm talking about. So here's a pretty straightforward way to look at it as well. So we can take a look at raw numbers of placement revenue and the sources and where they're coming from.
Yeah. And so you've got a bar chart. I want to jump in real quick. So you've got a bar chart right here that's showing like you have Loxo source showing how much you're making in placement value, LinkedIn, Indeed, insert any other any source that you would have. And you can even toggle. So it's like right now you have it on a bar chart, but say you wanted to look at it from like a pie chart standpoint and see like how it comes from the whole. This is where we just talked about actually in a recent episode with Vivian. She talked about people like to consume data differently. So the bar chart might be great for some people. The pie chart might be great for some people. Some people just want a raw data table. So that's the beauty of your reporting is you can customize these and all the different ways to tell the story. At the end of the day, you're trying to solve for is what source is helping us make the most money so I can start doing more of that and less of the other ones.
Absolutely. And Sam, to your point, I am definitely a bar graph guy. But yeah, you can definitely, and then another really great feature here is you can also then just look at a really simple summary here. And that's just giving you the number associated with each source. And that's another way that you can look at, export, and start to play around with any of that data as well.
Good insights here. So where I think this gets interesting then is, so this is looking at like the revenue that you've made, what's actually driving business. And another one I know you've talked about is just like the source of all of your candidates overall. So when we look into that report, this is one that I would imagine you should hope that it should look pretty similar, because if there's some big discrepancies and like a lot of your candidates are coming from other places, that should make you want to think, what's going on, what's falling apart that I'm not seeing these same trends in the closed won side, and is that an issue or not?
Absolutely. And what we're looking at here is a candidate insight report. So there's multiple reports that you can look at. And I think when we are looking at, there's a report where you can look at people that have just come into your database in general and looking at those sources. I personally think looking at this is a bit more valuable. Sam, to your point that you're just making, is now we're starting to really see, like, in our current stages. And again, as I mentioned before, definitely a bar graph kind of guy. But what I'm looking at here is my current stages across all my jobs and the source from where these candidates are coming from. Um, this may be a thing that you add in a filter of looking at your short list, or rather maybe even long list to short list to submitted, and start to look at trends of people that are making, or rather the sources from where those people that are making it through to the finish line are going from there. We have here again, just one of the things I love about these Loxo reports is that you have the ability to hover over each segment or group that you have, if you've segmented by a source, and you can get a really quick glance. If you're, maybe in a rush, we know that recruiting is a nonstop grind. So I think this is another really valuable report here. And again, this is a candidate insight report where we grouped by the current stage across our jobs, as well as segmented by the source from where these candidates came.
Yeah, this should illuminate pretty quickly. It's like, why are certain sources getting or not getting to later stages? And then the competitive side of me is almost wondering, as you're going through this, say you've got a recruiter on your team who just consistently blows quota out of the water, and say you have a recruiter who might be struggling. Could you go in and look at and see by the individual on your team, say you're a manager, say you're an owner, and understand what are the sources that each of these recruiters are pulling in people from, to start to understand differences and say, like, well, they're spending their time in the wrong places, and it could be as simple as that?
Absolutely. It's reporting is just as much a coaching tool as it is to give you feedback on your uh, just overall performance from an agency standpoint. If I'm a manager and I'm looking here and seeing, Logan has been doing a great job of getting people into the short list, but then it seems to really fall off when we're getting to the submitted or interviewing stage. Well, what I could do, like you just said, is pop in here, see where the candidates are coming from his short list, and then where they're the ones that are making it to submitted, and then we can have a conversation of where are you spending a lot of your time for those sourcing or for those candidates that you're sourcing. Based on this graph, um, it would be some manual sourcing as well as Loxo source, but it just gives you that insight to coach teams to spend time efficiently in the sources that make sense.
I love it. Yeah, so much to be, as you say, it's like it's the insights, but it's also the coaching at the end of the day. So you can help your organization grow and succeed together versus having, a couple individuals perform well and then, well, this person didn't cut it. I've got to get rid of them and find a new recruiter to replace them. So the candidate insight report, that's another really, really helpful one. Are there any other reports that you think that we should show as part of this?
One last report, wanted to cover here as we're talking about candidate source, is looking at a funnel report and then segmenting again by candidate source. I think this is more important for our applicants. And it goes to a point, Sam, you made earlier, in that I'm sure there's that little adrenaline rush when you see 50 applicants go into a job. That's awesome. But again, that's great, but we want to see where they're actually making it to in the pipeline. And that's a sales thing as well. So what this allows you to do is just kind of look from a funnel standpoint of our applied bucket and then to our submitted. And this is just an example. You can add
Mm-hmm.
more stages, but see, if I hover over, what you're able to see here is just where our applicants are coming from, and then of those who are making it to the submitted stage. I can tell you why this report might look a little wonky, because in our test environment, I don't think we have too many people applying, and we definitely seem to have a lot of submittals. So it's something you can definitely go to play around with a little bit. And this is when we go into our jobs report and we go to a stage conversion
Mm-hmm.
report, and putting in here, we're going to use workflow stage. And we'll probably cover this at a later time. One little tidbit I'd like to add is anytime you're doing these reports, and more, I'll cover that later.
All right. So, little cliffhanger there to leave y'all with. So, no, this was great. I know this is super helpful. Again, it's like sometimes it's just I don't know what to report on, so I'm not going to report on anything. Other times it's think about what is it that you're trying to solve for, to understand the data to be gleaned, or simply you want to coach your team a little bit better. So, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. You can find all the show notes in the description of your favorite podcast streaming platforms, as well as on loxo.co/podcast. Full video episode is available on YouTube as well as on our website. And if you ever have questions, send over to us at podcast@loxo.co. Logan, this has been a fun mini series. I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks worth of episodes with you. So I appreciate you sharing the knowledge as always, and hopefully inspire some recruiters to start incorporating these reports into their day-to-day moving forward.
Absolutely. Sam, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, love it. All right. See you next week, Logan.
Take it easy.